I'm going to take the next, I don't know, 15 minutes or so to give you a taste of what's going on in innovation in the open communities. In fact, I bet you a lot of your developers, your IT leaders are doing the stuff that I'm talking about. Because if you think about it, us as technologists, and how many of you all will categorize yourselves as technologists? You know, all right, what about business leaders or thinkers or, all right. How about both? You can't have more hands. You got to be one or the other. You see, you fell for it. You know, as technologists, we're walking around with swag, right? Think about it. I mean, it really is the era of technology empowering the art of the possible for the business. And then our business folks are full of vision. You know, you walk into a meeting, I have vision. You know, there's 2.5 quintillion, yeah, I said it, quintillion pieces of data being created every day. You know, 60% of the device of internet traffic will be from sensors and nodes and actuators, right? 1.5 billion mobile wallets. I mean, that's more than the people in the United States of America, right? You know, in 2018. 90% of us have our mobile devices at arm's reach, sir. I hope you're tweeting about this and not doing your email, right? Okay, right? So, I mean, it is, you know, so our business leaders, or those of us who care about helping our clients and differentiating are just, you know, ecstatic. But, you know, when they get happy, I kind of, you know, maybe get a little sour and I say, look, you know, vision without execution is hallucination. All right? So what I'm going to try to do is maybe remove some of the hallucination that's occurring here. And do that in the context of cloud, and in particular how cloud can help us, and open technologies can help us accelerate the execution of that vision, right? We've talked about earlier today private clouds, right? On-premise. We've talked about off-premise, and then kind of the combination of these. But architecturally, it really boils down to an open infrastructure, a platform, and software as a service or an API economy. Those are architecturally the layers, right? And then when you think about using cloud technology to make this vision a reality, because, by the way, if you've got 1.5 quintillion, it's very hard for me to say that word, quintillion pieces of data, guess what? Those are algorithms that you need to run. That's compute power that perhaps will be seasonal. You might have to scale your infrastructure outside of your walls to go handle that. How do you go do that if you're not using open technologies to allow you to provision virtual machines, compute, storage, and network outside of your own firewall into a off-premise situation like, say, SoftLayer, right? Or let's say you're building an application, a mobile application, and you want to give your developers speed because, you know, developers, to them, speed is what they say, you know, the kids say, I guess I'm a kid, but you know, the new Benjamin, right? Speed is the currency. They want to go fast. They want to fail forward. They want to iterate. So maybe what you want to do is give them the ability to build applications quickly, right? But also connect to the mothership, right? And do transactions. So maybe you need to kind of span clouds that way. How do you do that if you don't have open technologies and open architectures? Same thing when you think of using software as a service or building cross-device applications or anything like that. So what we have been doing, IBM, what we have been doing with our partners, and by the way, what a lot of you all have been doing with us as well, is creating an open cloud architecture. Everything from the open hardware to open technologies for infrastructure as a service, for open technologies to help you do platform as a service, and for open technologies for helping you interact with those applications. And those are linchpins. We started this journey about 4 years ago, and I'll kind of talk through some of these, all right? And it's amazing to see the momentum of these different ecosystems, okay? The momentum of innovation, the momentum of the art of the possible of what's going on here. And frankly, if you're not building on these technologies, or if your vendors or your providers or your partners don't embed these technologies inside, you're probably building a dead-end cloud. You're fighting the old war, okay, of the early 90s. All right, because I was with Dave and back in IBM Research doing research on markup languages, and I worked with Tim Berners-Lee on HTML. I helped work on that. I co-authored many of the original standards, right? And in those days, there was battles over the blink tag, right? So something be blinking or not. And one vendor, I'm not going to say who, wanted their thing, and another vendor wanted their thing, and we're kind of in the middle trying to be nice, right? Hey, let's just work together, guys, right? Imagine a world where you would type in HTTP, IBM.com, and you don't know if you'd get an answer back, right? It depends on the server. That would have been limiting. Your mobile device, sorry, I'm picking on you, because now you got your iPad out. you went bigger. He's like, oh yeah, I'm going to double down on you, Angel. Look, it's in the afternoon. My boss is not here. We can have fun. I don't think he's here, is he? No, okay. I lost train of thought. Oh yeah. So you don't have to worry about where or how that works because today's web servers has the Apache code inside of it, all of them. So it just works. And by the way, IBM helped start the Apache Foundation. We helped start Eclipse. We helped start all these open source foundations. The renaissance that we're in now, the swag that we feel now around cloud, data, engagement, mobile, right, and social, all these things are driven by open communities, much like it was then. And it was awesome times. But there's a big difference. And the big difference was now you all are much more involved. Does anyone know why HTML was created? What was the use case? It wasn't for Nike or whatever. It wasn't for doing what we do, right? It was to disseminate physics information. XML was the first use case for XML was the mathematical markup language to do computation and presentation of mathematics. Those are great use cases. Not how we ended up using them, right? So we are actually doing what we did then, but better because we have a broader set of use cases. So I'm going to walk through some of these linchpin technologies real quick and hopefully give you a flavor as we go across this architecture, infrastructure, platform, how you interact, and now remember, those three layers can span on-premise, off-premise, or help you do everything in between. It's pretty simple, right? So OpenStack. About 3 years ago, we were all obsessed around infrastructure as a service for cloud, right? I think of it as a Maslow hierarchy of needs. At the bottom, you want to eat and have shelter, and then as you move up, you want a Ferrari. For cloud, a lot of us were thinking about how do you provision VMs? How do you handle compute? How do you virtualize and manage networks, right? Lots of different open source efforts occurring. IBM had some great technology. We kind of thought that, if we can get the industry to rally around something, we could have something special. We can create the Apache for cloud infrastructure. That was what we were thinking. So we kind of looked at the communities, and OpenStack had a great community, a very positive community. We went over to some of our partners and said, hey, let's get together and create a foundation, a true open source, and I'll say this, true open governance, and I'll explain what that is in a second, environment. Since we started, the first conference had about 75 people, and someone actually brought their dog and parrot, okay? We're having one right now in Paris, and there's 6,000 developers at the conference. OpenStack has 20,000 participants, 400 companies. It's bigger than Linux as an open source. So if you're not using OpenStack in your infrastructure as a service, you're probably going to not have that HTTP thing work. Not exactly, but you understand what I'm saying? It's not going to be as interoperable as you like. Now, we move on to the platform layer. We live in a polyglot world. What does that mean? Lots of different languages. Developers want to use the right programming language for what they're building. They want to use the right shoe for the right outfit, right? So they don't want to be constrained by a single language. So what you want to have is an open platform for doing that. You guys remember Bala talking about Bluemix, right? You saw that earlier today. That's built on Cloud Foundry. On December 9th, IBM and 60 of our friends, partners and vendors and clients and so forth, and a big community is launching the Cloud Foundry Foundation like we did with OpenStack. And hopefully, fast forward, we'll have a revolution around platform as a service. What does that do for you? Well, you're able to build applications that work in Bluemix that can more easily connect into your internal systems, that can more easily work with partners' APIs and applications. It's a great thing. Docker. That's kind of the, anyone know hear the word Docker? I'm sure your folks have probably told you, right? Docker is really neat because it is containers made easy. Someone tells me, we solve really complex problems in a simple way. Right? That's kind of what Docker did for containers for Linux. You get great utilization of your CPU. It's far more efficient than a VM, right? And it has the added benefit of kind of encapsulating application logic. We partnered up with the Docker folks, and we announced, look, we're going to move this to open governance as well. Another piece of that open architecture that you all should be thinking about and asking your folks. So now let's move into the actual code that you would write. Does anybody sponsor mobile projects in your teams? No, you're living in 1980? Yes, a time machine, you know. Right? Yeah. Well, guess what? They're using Node, right? All mobile applications are using Node. They're probably using NoSQL, JSON, document-based ways of getting at that, right? Well, Node has a lot of work to be done still to make it enterprise kind of grade, and we're moving that into open governance. CouchDB. Ever heard of Cloudance? NoSQL in the cloud, right? So if you're using Node and CouchDB, you can build great applications. And of course, our friends, HTML5, CSS, and jQuery. Great cross-device, cross-platform way of building your apps. Do you know who co-chairs HTML5? IBM. Go figure, right? So let's not forget the developer who then needs to span the entire life cycle of what goes on. Because the reality is, when you build your applications, whether they're on-premise, off-premise, or any combination of those, you have a diversity of tools. It's not just a diversity of and heterogeneity of infrastructure and platform and languages, but it's a diversity and heterogeneity of tools. So we've been working real hard to try to make that tooling integration happen easy for you. So you can keep the tools that you use and still live in this world. That's really important, because the last thing you want to do is rub your guys the wrong way and force something on them. So this allows you to manage the tool lifecycle as well. So going back to this notion of open, let me define it for you, okay? Because not all open is created equal. In fact, what has also happened is that some folks kind of say, hey, look, you know, this code's open source, hippy-dippy, have some fun, take it. It's single vendor, perhaps. Perhaps that open has a license that might not be great for you to use. Or maybe that vendor may decide to change the license, and you end up holding the open source code and maintaining it. Do you want to be in the software development business? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know, right? So when you look at which open source to choose, and your developers come to you to talk, make sure that you have a true meritocracy, that there's a foundation around it, that it comes from an organization like Apache, or it's an independent entity where there's lots of different contributors in a healthy ecosystem that will support you, right? Or a vendor, or a set of vendors that support it, right? And then also matters to how you matters to how you build your code and how you work with the folks who your clients, the people that you're building code for. And we call that design thinking. I like to call that the fast path to the unicorn, because everybody wants that unicorn, that magical thing, that killer app. Well, you can reduce your search space, right, if you can kind of maybe get a little feedback early on and often in your development process. So when you think about open technologies in the context of cloud, interoperability and what we're doing, these linchpins of technology that I kind of quickly went through, enables a technology mix and match. It helps you maximize your investments. You can kind of take what you got, bring it into this new world, and still work across of these. And then the skill sets, that, the pool of skill. Think about 20,000 community members in OpenStack, right, that you can draw from in the industry to help you create that vision and make it a reality and not be hallucinating, right? Right, is there, okay? So I would recommend that you demand from your partners, your vendors, that they build their clouds open by design.